non-canonical, as it does not appear in the writings of JRR Tolkien, and inhabitants are Bronwyn. And now I do refuse to pronounce Amazon's original names the same way I would pronounce names invented by Professor Tolkien himself. So I will say Galadriel, Celeborn, I will say Mordor and Sauron, but I will say Arondir, I will say Bronwyn, and so on and so forth. So
a few moments later.
Canon, and the Meteor Man is falling from the skies again. We can see Ents, and once again, Ents are one of the oldest races in Middle-earth. They could have been, and they were of course present in Middle-earth at the time.
Well, where to even begin with the now emerging Tolkien industry, where a lot of grifters have jumped on board, pro or con, over the Amazon controversies. And we're going to take a break from the usual idiots like Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, George the Giant, Ark, whatever, and the racist propagandists, because whatever else, that's kind of easy to refute. But there are some middling people. They're not much more intelligent, but they're a little bit more crafty. So we're going to focus on European lore, who really likes to package the racism and fascism in a at least more sophisticated way, but it's still very deceptive and very ugly. So first he's going to make a very weird move to say, my friends, I only care about the Tolkien lore and the books and the books and the books, and then he's going to completely contradict himself in 3 seconds. Well, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we only care about the books. And all right, that should be the focus. But nope, we're going to go the inevitable hate the black man. I want to be honest here. I'm not defending Lenny Henry. I want to make that very clear. I'm not defending Lenny. I'm just saying, as a negative thing, we're defending the Tolkien and the mythology because he's getting himself wrapped up in a lot of questionable stuff. So he's pointing to Lenny, because, he has dark skin, and he says, my friends, we're going to hear Tolkien himself. He himself and the Tom Shippey, and they will verify my racism.
Look to the origins of the Hobbits themselves in Tolkien's mind and who they really were. So I think that somebody else will explain these facts better than I could ever do that. So let us listen to Professor Tolkien himself, and also the only Tolkien expert that is worth listening to, and that's Tom Shippey, who was fired by Amazon.
Hobbits are just rustic English people, made small in size because it reflects the general small reach of their imagination, but it's not the small reach of their courage or latent power.
I think the Hobbits are not only specifically English, but Tolkien would have said straight away that they're specifically West Midlanders, that they remind him of the society of his youth, and they come...
Well, to be fair, that is a real interview, and I found the interview, which is 40 minutes. I want to repeat that. That thing's nearly 40 minutes, and he used 8 seconds of a very large interview. And he didn't play with the audio of those 8 seconds, but that is an insanely deceptive way of what he's talking about, because his thesis is, my friends, my YouTube channel, European Lore, you know what Tolkien did? He used the European lore. Well, there's a small little problem with that, because I'm not even joking, just a few seconds before that little clip of Tolkien, he's refuting entirely this entire video. It's really shocking. So I'm just going to use a very short section of the thing he cut out, and then I'll get into the longer section, which is a little bit more interesting in terms of what Tolkien is talking about.
The Dwarves, of course, quite obviously, couldn't you say in many ways they remind you of the Jews? All their words are Semitic, obviously, and constructed be Semitic. There's a tremendous love of the artifact, and of course the immense warlike capacity of the Jews too, which we tend to forget nowadays. Hobbits are just rustic English people, made small in size because it reflects the general small reach of their imagination, but it's not the small reach of their courage or latent power.
He is affirming that, yeah, the dwarves are Jews. And here's a problem. Jews are not European. They are not indigenous to Europe. Anybody who's even moderately aware of Jewish history knows that they did not come from Europe. But European lore is saying My friends, all he talks about is us, the beautiful white people in Britain. You have to face the facts. It's about us, the beautiful white man, not this ugly, dark-skinned thing which is trying to creep into the Tolkien. And then they're like, well, two things, really. One, Jewish history is not European history. The Jews have a origin outside of Europe. Secondly, I don't think you know Jews. There are actually a lot of Jews who are not light skinned. Some of them are actually fairly dark skinned. Just a reminder, Jew does not equal white. We'll put that aside. But now let's quote the larger excerpt where Tolkien is very firm on this. He's not literally talking about race in the way he's invoking race or even culture.
In The Lord of the Rings, that certain races should embody certain principles, the elves, wisdom, the dwarfs, craftsmanship, men, husbandry and battle and so forth.
Didn't intend it, but when you've got these people on your hands, you've got to make them different, haven't you? Well, of course, as we all know, ultimately, we've only got humanity to work with. It's the only clay we've got. And, of course, any races you make, if they're speaking and thinking, are, taken from certain parts of humanity as one knows it, with slight alterations of emphasis. That's all you can do, isn't it, really, ultimately? Because the elves are simply, in its sense, an expression certain, not really wholly legitimate desires the human race has about itself. We should all, or at least large part of the human race, would like to have greater power of mind, greater power of art, by which I mean that the gap between the conception and the power of execution should be shortened. We should like that, and we should like, of course, longer time, if not indefinite time, which to go on knowing more and making more. Well, therefore, we make the elves immortal in a sense. I had to use immortal, but I didn't mean that they were eternally immortal, merely that they are very longeval, and their longevity probably lasts as long as the inhabitability of the earth.
So yes, the elves are an idealization of humanity, of how humanity wants more intelligence, more beauty, right, more life, more art, and so on and so forth. And as he says, I only can deal with the history I have, human history. Okay, I have to create these kind of, quote, races, but they're just aspects of humanity. Now, I want to be honest, unlike certain people, the dwarf thing is very troubling and very problematic because it is sort of an exception. He does refer to race here and there and racism, but on the whole, it's very scattered. So the dwarves are kind of a very big exception to the rule. That is an active research question, which I will continue to do work on, because that is probably a troubling paradox, because if he says he's not really basing this on, quote, our history in a direct sense, then why is he using Jewish history or the Jewish ethnic group? Yeah, that's actually a very deep question, which I will not answer because that is a difficult one. But now let's cite another place where, again, he is affirming part of what European lore says, but then he's very quick to note he's talking about his entire childhood, not just the childhood in Britain.
Is of African look. And if anybody in Europe lived at the time and looked like this, would certainly not a native inhabitant. And there were not bigger settlements and villages and towns or tribes, people living like this. And there will be people who will be trying to tell you otherwise, but those people are beings who would like to change history and facts. Don't believe them, please. And also,
that's what I feel at home. The Shire is very like the kind of world in which I first became aware of things. Very like. Which was perhaps more poignant to me because I wasn't born in it. I was born in Bloemfontein, South Africa. I was very young when I got back, but at the same time, it bites into your memory and imagination even if you don't think it has. If your first Christmas tree is a wilting eucalyptus, and if you're normally troubled by heat and sand, then to have, just at the age of imagination is opening out, suddenly find yourself in a quiet Warwickshire village. I think it engenders a particular love of what you might call central Midland English countryside based on good waterstones and elm trees and small quiet rivers and so on. And, of course, sort of rustic people about.
At what age did you come to England?
I was supposed when I was landing on about 3.5. Pretty poignant, of course, because you see, one of the things why people say they don't remember is because it's like constantly photographing the same thing on the same plate. Slight changes simply make a blur. But if a child's had a sudden break like that, It's conscious. What it tries to do is to fit the new memories onto the old. I've got a perfectly clear, vivid picture of a house, but I now know that it's a beautifully worked out pastiche of my own home in Bloemfontein and my grandmother's house in Birmingham.
Yeah, a lot of these bozos keep forgetting to mention this, that Tolkien's not British. He was born and raised in South Africa. Now, he did leave South Africa from a very early age. But as he says, those early memories are very vivid to him, very powerful, and he continued to use them in his work. So if you're going to continue the thesis that, oh, all he did was use merry old England, all he saw were the beautiful white people in the countryside, he wasn't from Britain. This is a person from South Africa. If you know anything about South Africa, it is extremely racially mixed. It has blacks, it has Chinese, it has Indians, and as he himself says, he was aware of these things. He even used the word mixed cultures in this interview. European lore is what he is. He's a racist piece of garbage, but he's using nicer tones. He's being more clever. Let me cite Tolkien himself, my friend. I gave you 10 seconds. What more do I need? And the great Tom Shippey. Well, I respect Tom Shippey, and I'm sure from his vantage point, he could produce a lot of text to give his point of view. So can I. I found something on Numenor where Tolkien is very explicit. He based it on Egypt. Unless Egypt magically transported to England, he's not talking about England. But like anything else, you want to be careful with these texts and letters and sources. What does he mean by Egypt? Does he mean the racial group? Does he mean the culture? Does he mean the civilization in terms of artistic works, architecture? What does he mean by that? It's not so clear cut. So just giving 10 seconds or one sentence isn't enough. We have to look at more and more evidence. If you're going to be honest, tell us what is Tolkien up to. You can say broadly he is tapping into European mythologies. It is not correct to say he's tapping into only European mythologies. That is simply factually not true. In this interview you yourself are citing, he says that precisely. He says, I'm not just using European mythologies. He's making use of quite a few mythologies, Jewish mythologies, biblical mythologies, Egyptian mythologies. None of those are European. Nobody with a brain thinks they're European. I understand where he's coming from, and if you want to hate Amazon, that's fine. But can we please stop invoking Tolkien in these debates? He's not interested in having these debates. He said it very clearly. I'm not doing symbols. I'm not doing allegories. Just read the mythical history on its own grounds. But I would admit the Jewish example and dwarves being modeled on Jews is a paradox, and I have to work through that. But that's being honest. But beyond the dwarves and the Jews, bringing in race into the discussion, you have to do it very, very carefully, not just invoke it for propagandistic reasons to make money. That's pretty awful given the virtues of what Tolkien is up to and what he intended for the work to do.